Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, you know who's with me going to the playoffs. It's my main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reg?
What up, man? You're right. We are playoff bound. Washington Commanders. We're in the big dance, Ken.
Yeah. This is not where we expected to be preseason.
Not at all. We hoped that we would see some arrows pointing up, a competitive team, win 8 games or something like that. But to be on the cusp of winning 12 games, even in the wildest dream in year one of this new regime, I don't think anybody thought that, man. And if they say that they did, they're lying.
Right. Right.
E-
Right.
even your the fan that's got rose-colored glasses didn't suspect 12 wins or 11 wins at this point, and potentially 12 going into the final game of the season. But look, man, I'll take it. I'm
Yeah.
happy about it. I'll take it. We won Sunday Night Football, prime time. Everybody's watching. Overtime. Oh
Yeah.
man, it was good. It was lovely, lovely.
Yeah. And it was another Jaden fest, right? The
Yeah,
the the more the Commanders need Jaden, the higher he rises.
yeah,
It just, you think at some point he can't do it, but he just does, right? Uh Commanders pulling out an overtime win over the Falcons, 30-24, and it was almost a, a tale of two halves, right? The first half, you thought, man, what is going on here? They couldn't get in, they couldn't get out of their way. A lot of that continued into the second half, but in spite of them trying to hurt themselves as much as they could, they still kept on finding a way of scoring and clawing and coming back and ultimately putting up the win.
yeah.
And it just it was just kind of a whirlwind. These were definitely the games that we would have lost the past few years, without a doubt. Um, the 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 difference makers, as I always say, uh, there's zero doubt Jaden Daniels is a difference maker. Even as a rookie, year 2, year 3, year 4, the kid is going to be incredible for years to come. Let's just start working on his next contract now, to try to save money. Can we just sign him for 50 million now so we don't have to pay him 70, 80, 90 million that he's going to get in another 5 years? Um, the kid is something else. Uh, his QBR, I mean, his numbers aren't off the chart. If you just look at his numbers and you don't watch the game, you don't see what's in the numbers.
Okay,
But when
give
you
it to us.
see what he does in the clutch moments, in the third downs and fourth downs, um, you can't help but shake your head and say this kid is something special. We've been saying it since week 2. We saw stuff in week 1 that we liked. Come week 2 and on, it's just been a love fest for Jaden Daniels, as a Commanders fan.
Yeah, for sure, man. In this game, this was certainly the Jayden Daniels game. I mean, there were games during the season where Jayden had moments, and we were excited and happy and celebrated those moments. But this was by far the game of the year for Jayden, to where you say he pretty much put the team on his back and carried this team to a win and into the playoffs. I'm sure you have the numbers there, but Jayden Daniels had over 100 yards rushing, right?
Right.
And with his combined with his pass and all-purpose yard, he had a total. He accounted for, I think, 350, 54 to be exact, 350 something yards between passing and rushing last night, and an incredible performance, right? I think we all will say that we do not want or do not like Jake Daniels using his legs that much,
Right.
but last night, Sunday Night Football, it was required. He did it. did it safely, got out of the game unscathed, and should be ready for next week's game. But every time he took off running, I can't help as a fan, man, to kind of cringe and hope that it would be just a regular tackle. He gets up and on to the next play. But in the moment, it was good to see. We saw, as you pointed out, a difference maker in that quarterback position, and once again, the team was riddled with penalties that that was killing drives and giving the Falcons opportunities. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that we were in second and third and long, and that required us to punt the ball. But at the end of the day, the team is who they are. And I don't think at this point in the season, end of the season, that's going to change. And I know that they meaning the front office, will address some needs in the offseason and free agency and the draft, so that hopefully this is not a theme going into next season. But as of this point, we are who we are. And at this point, it's a resilient team and a team that fights and claws to the end. And we have the magic of Jake Daniels, who at this point, you got to say he's Offensive Rookie of the Year over any other rookie at this point and stage in the game, man, because at this point, this kid is just a highlight reel.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he's on our side.
Without a doubt. I know it seems like it's going extreme because he's a rookie. Do you think there should be any consideration for some votes for MVP? I mean, and I'm not saying he's the best quarterback out there. I mean, if that's all you're looking for, then just go ahead and every single year, give it to the kid in Kansas City. But is there a player that is more important? You take this one player away from the team, and Washington is probably 5 wins.
Let me just say this.
And I would say the other people that are being considered, Lamar and
Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes.
Allen. I mean, the teams that are around them make their job a whole lot easier.
For sure.
He's putting up maybe not as crazy numbers, but the play that is performing and the things that he is doing for this team. Again, I'm not saying he's deserving of it. I'm just saying he should be in the consideration for what he has done for this team. The difference maker that he is, time and time and time again. And he rises up. And while I'm on it, I'm just going to go. He is the premier NFL closer.
Okay.
If you have not heard this stat, he has thrown a TD in the final 30 seconds of 5 games this season. No quarterback, I'm not talking rookies, no quarterback in the history of the NFL has ever done that.
Okay. Well, that certainly is clutch. Certainly,
it's just premier.
Poise. It's poise, right?
It's poise. I mean, you get to the fourth quarter, under 2 or 3 minutes, and he has the ball. He's getting to the point like you see Kansas City. You don't want Kansas City to have the ball with 2 minutes remaining and a timeout. That's right. How Washington is becoming now. 3 for 3 on 4th down yesterday.
Okay.
Right. Every single one we debated. Should we be going for it or shouldn't we? Should we or shouldn't we? They went for it. They went for it three times. 3 times they picked it up.
Okay. I like what you're saying. And clearly, if Ken had a vote, he would cast his vote for Jake Daniels for MVP.
I don't know that I would give it to him, but he should be in the conversation. And I don't think he's in the conversation at all, almost. There's 3 or 4 other names that are in, and they just assume that they're going to, we're going to give him Rookie of the Year and take him out of the conversation for everything else. I think he should be in the conversation for obviously Rookie of the Year. That's a given. That's just a given.
Okay.
let's have a conversation of him being MVP. But go ahead.
Well, let me just say this. Just looking at these guys, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jake Daniels' numbers stack up against those guys, and in some cases, a little bit better. But the reality of the situation is, to your point, all of their teams are better talent-wise than Washington's roster, and yet they are in the MVP race. But let's be honest, the MVP is not always given to the player who is truly the most valuable to that team. It's just not how it goes.
Right.
And since I wasn't sure we'd have this conversation, I don't want to spout this and be incorrect, but I don't know if there's ever been a rookie that's won MVP. And if there has been, it's probably only one in the history of the league. So earning MVP trophies also seems to be kind of a rite of passage.
Right.
Right. They're
Correct.
not going to give the rookie most valuable player. So despite what he's doing, it's taking the league by storm. It's making people notice. But Jayton was never going to be given most valuable player despite what he's done. The only way that would happen is if all of a sudden this team is 12-2, 15-2, and looks like, man, we're killing people and gonna make a run to the Super Bowl as a rookie. You might get some consideration then, but otherwise, that's not going to be the case. The point you're making about some of the stuff that Jayton is doing, although I'm excited about it, man, the reality of it, I have to remember he's playing a last place schedule.
Sure.
Clearly, he is outperforming expectations. But let's put it in perspective and understand that he's got a roster that he has elevated, but at the same time, this roster and this team is playing a last place schedule. All you got to do is just look at last year's Rookie of the Year, CJ Stroud, and when they won their division and started playing a first place schedule, they look a little bit different this year. I understand there's been some injuries and some other things, but the schedule's a little bit different this year, and all of a sudden, he's not quite doing the same. So let's see how the front office retool this team next year. We get some more people into the building. We upgrade some talent because we're going to be playing a second place schedule next year. And so the teams that we're going to play, the defense is going to be a little bit harder, going to perform a little bit better. It's going to be the teams of the caliber of the Philadelphia Eagles almost week in and week out. And as of this year, we went 1-4, 1-5 against those teams. And next year, you're going to have a lot more of those teams on your schedule. So I want to put it in perspective. I'm happy and excited. It is clear that we have a special player at the quarterback position, but I do just want to pump the brakes for myself and just put it in perspective to just say he's doing what he's supposed to do, but let's see him do it when the competition is a little bit stiffer.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, I'll even go back to, Patrick Mahomes, he basically sat the bench the first year and took over as a second-year player. But the previous year, they were in the AFC Championship game, right? So he took over. He's never played on a bad team.
Correct.
Right. And somewhat for Josh Allen, right? If anything, there's been a lot of criticism on him and Lamar both because they can't take him to the next level, right? They get you to the playoffs, and then what happens?
Okay.
And that again, that's with good teams, good defenses that back up what they have. Washington's defense, especially 2 weeks in a row, first half, you don't know where the defense is. And I will, as much as I will bash the defense, I got to also give them credit. I don't know what they're doing at halftime, but back-to-back weeks, Barkley was he was going crazy the first half. Bijan Robinson just going crazy. Not quite as much, but he still was had two touchdowns and 82 yards in the first half. He finished with like another 9 yards the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And same thing with Barkley. Barkley had, I don't know what it was, 110, 115 yards in the first half, and he finished with another 20, 25 yards, something minimal, right?
Yeah.
Not impactful as a running back. And again, I don't know what they're doing, but they're turning it on in the second half. They are making the adjustments that they need to make. I mean, Washington in the second half dominated the third quarter, dominated the fourth quarter until Atlanta's final drive, and gave up the touchdown so they could tie it up with basically no time left. But in the third quarter, they ran 3 plays offensively. They ran 3 plays.
Atlanta, you're talking
Atlanta
Atlanta.
did. Yes. We came out the ball, had a long drive, 6-7 minute drive. Then they turned around and had 3 plays and out. They ate up roughly 2 minutes on the clock. And we had the ball the rest of the third quarter into the fourth quarter.
Yes.
And we kind of continue that some into the fourth quarter as well. And that's why we, came from 10 points down at halftime. Ended up went on a 17-point run, swing. And, at the end, we ended up giving up the touchdown to go into overtime, unfortunately. But it's crazy. It's crazy how these back-to-back games kind of had some similarities,
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I want to mention that I think that third quarter, when you talk about the time of possession, I think to your point, Atlanta had the ball for about 2 minutes, total -1 yards. Otherwise, Washington had the ball the entire time in the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. And I think that was an impact not only to their rhythm, but also I think it tired out their defense. That was a benefit to Washington late in the game.
Yes.
Because again, with Washington having controlling time of possession in the second half and then into the overtime, I think that was the effects of ball control by Washington against Atlanta's defense. But you mentioned here, and I got it here, and I want to make sure I say it correctly here. You mentioned that Washington overcame the 10-point deficit, and this was the first time in team history that for Washington to have overcome a 10-point deficit in the second half in consecutive games. So when you mentioned that the game looked very much like last week, because it pretty much was.
Right.
So 10-point deficit in the second half, back-to-back weeks in consecutive games was the first time in the history the team had ever done that. So that was pretty interesting, man. And so again, Washington walked away with that victory 30-24. That made Washington have a home record this year because the final game is going to be on the road in Dallas. And so they finished a home record of 7-2. And that puts us at 11-5, a record. And again, another stat here is the 11 wins thus far almost exceeds the 12 wins that the team has had combined the last 2 seasons.
Wow.
So yeah. And here we are. And assuming that we win next week, we will have more wins in this season, or as many wins in this season as we've had combined the previous 2 seasons. So hell of a year, man. Hell of a year for the fans, hell of a year for the team, hell of a year for the players. You're happy for players that have been here in the long term. The Tress Ways, the John Allens, the Deron Paynes, the Terry McLaurins, the guys that have been here through a lot of the down and starting to see the upside or the positive side of winning, not only just winning as a player, but seeing the fan base come back, seeing the excitement in the stadium, and actually seeing a home field advantage. So I'm happy, man, for a lot of those players and even us as fans, right? This has been a long time coming.
And it goes a long way of the character of this team. And I'll even say the character of the players that, while there's not a lot that have been here for more than 2 or 3 years, those players that have been here for, I'll say, 4 years and more, that have gone through this, to what you said, there's no selfishness here, right? Terry has done well this year, but there's periods where they haven't gone to Terry, or a team has shut Terry down, and he doesn't complain. He doesn't do anything. He works harder. You see him celebrating with the players that are making the plays. He is about the team.
Right.
I don't doubt that he wants to do the best that he can, but if he for if he has a bad game or teams do everything they can to shut him down, he is happy that the other players step up and do what they need to do for the win. The character of this team to keep on fighting, to fight along with Jaden Daniels, uh, to make these plays, to make these catches, to make these tackles, whatever it is, goes a long way. Uh, Washington needs to quickly, I'll spin on this real quick. Washington needs to quickly do something about all these penalties these last 3, 4, 5 weeks. 13 penalties, 108 yards. If they would have had 7 or 8 penalties, that's a good amount of penalties.
That's a lot.
13 is ridiculous. That it almost cost them this game, right? It's almost cost them a couple games. It did cost them the Pittsburgh game, and
Almost cost them the Eagles game last week.
correct, right?
Five turnovers, all the penalties, right?
Yeah, and that's going to catch up with you in the playoffs, without a
Absolutely.
doubt. I mean, it caught up with Cowboys, right? That they lost the Cowboys game again because of a lot of stupid penalties. And they need to cut this in half, without a doubt. They need to get this 6 and under. 13 penalties. That's over 4 penalties a quarter.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of penalties, man.
But again, I think some of this goes back to we are who we are. And we are a team that is going to have penalties, and hopefully with the upgrade of some players at some positions next season, we'll hopefully minimize that. One of the other things that I think will need to be addressed is you mentioned Terry and him being a team player first, but Terry had 1 target in the first half. 1 target. Finished the game with 7 targets, but he only had 1 catch for 5 yards for the entire game. Right. And depending on how you want to look at that, depending what side you're viewing it from, they still put up 30 points and won the game with Terry being a non-factor. But at the same time, if he's your best receiver, you can't have your best receiver going 1 for 5.
Right.
It's just crazy, man. You can't, I understand Terry's never going to get 10 receptions for 180 yards. That's probably not going to happen on our team in our offense. But you need some production out of Terry. Is it good that we can still win games without Terry? Of course it is. But that's not how you want to go into games winning. No different than you don't want to have Jaden Daniels being your leading rusher.
Right.
It happens. You might need to have that happen. And you might have games where Terry is a non-factor, but that shouldn't be the norm. That should be more of an anomaly than more of the norm with Terry. But one thing I want to say, man, is and we even actually failed to mention this on the pregame podcast, that recognizing that Dan Quinn was coaching against his former team,
right,
the Atlanta Falcons, and we failed to mention that. But kind of a poetic justice here for Dan Quinn is in his first season as a second opportunity as a head coach in this league, he won and clinched a playoff spot against his former team.
Right.
Now, Dan Quinn doesn't come across as the type of guy that is going to want to rub that in the fans of Atlanta. But I got to believe that didn't go unnoticed, to clinch a playoff spot with his new team at home against his former team that essentially fired him.
Right.
All right. And so I'm happy for Dan Quinn, man. And again, I know a lot of people were not happy with the Dan Quinn signing. I think I was indifferent about it. I wasn't going to say I disliked the hire. I know a lot of people did because they wanted Ben Johnson. But I was trusting Adam Peters, and I think we had that sentiment all along the way, regardless of if we agreed with some of the moves and decisions they were making. We believed in Adam Peters, and so the fact that Adam Peters brought Dan Quinn, we said, "Hey, we're going to trust it." He may not have been our first choice, but we certainly just said we're going to trust it, man. And I got to say, it's turned out that Dan Quinn was the right man for the job, and the coaching staff that he put together. And so I'm happy for Dan Quinn as our head coach, man. And I'm happy to have him.
Yeah. No doubt about that. There's been a good gel from top to bottom in the Commanders organization this year.
Yes.
It's like everybody has made the right move. And especially after coming after, a couple decades of getting in your own way, boneheaded ownership moves, boneheaded coaching moves, boneheaded player moves, players, here and there, not across the board, but players here and there giving up. You could see it, their attitudes or whatever. It's just not going on like that. I did want to get your opinion real quick. Watching the game, I know that you're a Michael Penix. Coming into the draft, you were a person that liked Michael Penix. I don't know that you wanted. I can't speak for you on whether you wanted him coming to Washington or not, but I thought he played a pretty bad game, to be honest with you. I think if potentially if Kirk Cousins was playing that game, we would have lost that game.
You saying Michael Penix? You think Michael Penix played a bad game?
I thought he played a bad game. He was 19 for 35, 54%. QBR of only 71.5. He had the one touchdown, one interception, but he missed a lot of open players, and he missed them bad where they almost didn't even put their hands up. And coming out of college, he was known for his accuracy, and his accuracy was not good. I know second game, but his accuracy was bad. I would, at the end of the game, when the game was over, I was like, I'm glad that Kirk Cousins wasn't playing. Not that Kirk Cousins is crazy, but Kirk Cousins is going to hit the wide open receiver.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this. I'll give you. So yes, I when there were rumors, when there was some uncertainty about what Washington was going to do with the number 2 pick in the draft, whether they would draft Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, whichever one was not chosen by Chicago, or would there be this trade package that they just couldn't resist and drop down the board in the draft? And yeah, I thought that if that happened in that scenario, that I would like Michael Penix Jr. over the J.J. McCarthy's, the Drake Mays of the world. So yeah, I was a Michael Penix fan. You said that he played a bad game, and as I was watching the game, I never thought that he played a bad game. I thought that he was doing just fine. I mean, he threw for 223 yards, but my thing was, think about two things. Think about how Jayden looked in his first 2 or 3 starts. He certainly didn't look like the guy he is today. You want to compare QBR ratings?
He was, hold on a second. I'm going to interrupt you real quick. He was throwing at like 80, 85%, 83% completion rate. Everybody was going crazy the first 3 or 4 or 5 games.
Well, let me finish.
Completion rate and no interceptions.
That's fair, but let's also note that Jayden Daniels was throwing a hell of a lot of screen passes early part of his game. We were the screen team. So if you throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage and some guy gets yaks after it, it's a completion. So let's note that Jayden didn't throw a lot of down the path. Everyone was also frustrated. Why is he not opening it up and throwing the ball down the field? If you notice, Atlanta wasn't throwing a lot of check downs, screen passes. They were throwing the ball down the field to Drake London. So the accuracy may not have been there in his second start, but I saw enough of Michael Penix personally that I think Atlanta's in good hands. I think they made the right decision by drafting that kid at number 8. And I think he is going to be a hell of a player for that team going forward. And I even told some fans, some friends of mine that, hey, I know you guys lost that game, but you have nothing to worry about with Michael Penix. I think that kid is going to be really good. So again, if you want to compare his second start to Jayden Daniels' first 2 or 3 starts, I'm not going to say that Jayden was lighting it up. And again, I'm not just going to compare completion percentage because we were throwing a lot of screens and check down passes. So So I wouldn't compare the two. And then let's also talk about the fact that Washington's defense was playing a lot better this time, and they knew what to do here, and they put the pressure. But I think that kid is going to be just fine. I'd have no
Yeah,
problem with him
I
being my quarterback.
yeah, I don't know what, and I'm not trying to be. This isn't a shot at you. I don't know what you were seeing because he didn't do anything special. Nothing. You could have taken his name off. He was a generic quarterback. He didn't run. He didn't make any great. You didn't go sit there and go, man, that was a good play. That was a good throw.
How
If
quickly
anything, he had open receivers where Drake London had a step and a half on people, and he put it so far off of it with no pressure, on him. He put it so far that couldn't even get his hands on the ball
Ken, it was a second. It was
multiple
a second.
times.
It was a second start, brother. Okay. First of all, let's do this. It was first of all the second start. If you go back, I'm looking at our schedule.
I'm not saying he's going to be bad, but I'm just saying what you saw in that game. There's nothing to see that was worthy.
So did Jayden look great against Tampa? Nah, not really. We played the Giants. That was a game where it was all field goals. Jayden didn't look that great. And then he had his coming out game in week 3 where we won against the Bengals. That was Jayden's third start before he really started to do something. And then the fourth game was against the Cardinals. This kid was playing his second game, man.
I see. I think you're remembering wrong. I think the first game, there were a lot of checkdowns. I don't disagree that there was a lot of short passes.
But a lot of checkdowns and screen passes.
We're like, man, he made some plays. He literally made some plays. Then with the Giants game was a struggling game. It was only a struggle in the red zone because we kept on having penalties in the red zone. Multiple times we had penalties in the red zone. That's what we kept on saying. We can't hurt ourselves in the red zone. I think there was a fumble in the red zone, at least one against the Giants as well. I guarantee you.
Listen, I'll just say this. There was nothing I saw last night that would make me change my mind about liking Michael Penix. Listen, I will tell you the first thing right off the bat. I'm glad we didn't get Caleb Williams. I've seen enough of that kid play, and I'm glad we didn't pick that guy. I saw nothing in that game last night that changed my mind to make me go, man, Michael Penix is not as good as I thought he was, and I'm glad that we did not trade down and pick Michael Penix. I saw nothing. In fact, at this point, I would be willing to take Michael Penix if I was a team over Caleb Williams.
I don't know that I would go that far, but I will say that, yeah, I've said it before. Caleb Williams is in one play, he will be an incredible player and a train wreck in the exact same play.
Because he's an all script guy.
Player on the field and a train wreck in the exact same play.
Because he's an all script guy. He's a highlight guy.
Yes.
If I need him
all script. That's when he shines the most. Yes.
And if I need him to just stand in the pocket and go through the progressions and make the plays, Caleb has the ability to do so, but not at a consistent rate. Jake Daniels can do it consistently, and so can Michael Penix.
Yeah, that's bad coaching. We're going down another track here, but that's bad coaching on Chicago. They already lost their head coach. They continue to not know what to do with him coach wise. He's going to have a whole new staff, going to have to learn a whole new system.
And let me give you one more. Let me give you one more nugget about Michael Penix here, and then we can move on. He was also making his second start on prime time in basically a playoff game under a lot of pressure in his second start. That also could have been a factor in that game. But I didn't see anything that made me change my mind about Michael Penix. So,
yeah, I didn't see anything in that game that made me go,
he's no Jayden Daniels now.
Regardless, if I was another team, I wouldn't be like, man, I wish he was on my team.
I did. I mean, he's no Jayden Daniels. Don't get me wrong, but I still like him. So
yeah, I think you've made your judgment going into the game, and there was no. Again, I'm just going to say there was nothing in that game. I don't see anything that he did in that game. He did a fine job, but nothing franchise quarterback worthy. No plays, no throws. There was nothing incredible about him. Not that you need a whole game, but moments. There were no moments.
If they had benched Kirk 5 weeks ago and started that kid, and by the time he showed up into that game last night, we might have been in trouble.
Well, that's
I'm just
that.
telling you.
I go the opposite. We would have been in trouble if Kurt would have been playing because
The
Penix
way
left.
the way the way Kirk had been playing, absolutely not.
That doesn't mean he's going to play again like that this week. He had a bad stretch, and they had a first round quarterback
Okay.
sitting in the wings. I mean,
Okay.
to me, Atlanta's got a mess going on. Maybe Penix is the guy, but they got a mess going on.
What's
It'll be
what's the
interesting to see
what's
what they
the
do.
mess other than it's going to cost them financially? But they're going to go into next season with Michael Penix and those same players that they had last night, and they're probably going to make some upgrades just like we will. Where's the mess? That they're going to owe Kirk some money on the books? I mean,
Yes, that
but the, but
that
the
for
t- but,
one,
but the team on the field is going to be just fine.
to be determined.
Okay,
To be
fair enough.
determined.
Fair enough.
Atlanta was Atlanta yesterday, right?
Okay.
They made Atlanta plays, and Washington was able to capitalize on with all their mistakes that they were able to make. Atlanta was Atlanta, and I don't see anything. They've got some talent. They've got talent
You're,
at
again,
the wide receiver and running
listen to what
back.
you're saying. You're saying all of that, and it took 60 plus minutes for us to win at home against a guy that you said didn't play well, a team that is Atlanta. If you're kind of dismissing them as just Atlanta, they put up. I mean, they didn't really. They pretty much had the ball for 3 quarters because they missed the third quarter. They tied the game, sent it into overtime. And if they had got the ball first at the coin toss, who's to say that we would have been walking off the field? I mean, it took overtime for us with offensive rookie of the year and our franchise quarterback, Jayden Daniels, to beat that team. And we were the home team. So,
And that's because of all our penalties. We had 13 penalties. Again, you drop that down into 5 penalties,
but
and I don't know what the NFL average is. I would say
okay.
probably 5 penalties a game is about probably the average. You drop it down to 5 penalties, and we walk away on that game. It wasn't just the third quarter overall. I mean, we had the ball 41 minutes to 25 minutes. So it was we controlled a lot of the ball throughout the entire game. Didn't always put up points, but it is what it is.
Okay. Well, we're still in the playoffs. With Green Bay losing to Minnesota right before that happened and Washington winning, that bumped us up to the 6th seed. And as of now, that would mean that if the playoffs started today, we would not be playing Philly in a rematch. We would actually be going to Los Angeles and playing the Rams. Our old former coach, Sean McVay, and the crew, Cam Curl, our team favorite, Manuel Forbes, would all be in LA, and we would be on our way to the West Coast playing that game. Now, I don't know how that is going to come out after the next week's games with
Right.
all the wins and losses. But as of now, we're sitting in the 6th spot, and we will be going to LA playing the Rams. And I will say at this point, I actually like our chances.
Yeah.
But we got another game to play, and that will be against the hated Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's not uncommon that your first game in the NFL ends up being I'm sorry, your first game in the playoffs in the NFL ends up being a division rival. I don't like that. I don't want to do a division rival right off the bat.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you got Philadelphia. For me, it's not so much that playing the wild card against a division opponent. In this case, I don't know which Philadelphia team is going to show up. And let's be honest, man, with the way Saquon Barkley is playing, the Eagles could be a tough out. And I know we beat them last week. But I think Jalen Hurts being injured in the first quarter changed their offense. And I think that played a factor in us winning that game. I'm not going to apologize for it because when we lost Jayden Daniels for a couple of games, it affected our team, and no one apologized for beating us because Jayden wasn't 100%. So I'm not going to apologize, but I do think it changed the dynamic of the game when Jalen Hurts went out. So come the playoff, and that game is in Philly, a division opponent, and they've shown to be a little bit better than us. I'm kind of glad that we're not having to play them, or I'm hoping that we do not have to play them in the first round of the playoff in the wild card round.
Yeah, I mean, I think Philly's a better team than LA. But I'll go back. I only give a little bit of that. Is Philadelphia better with Jaden with Hurts? Yes. But at the same time, they hung 40 plus points on Dallas with the same backup quarterback, right? And I know different teams are different weeks and all that. Hurts didn't help or hurt us putting 22 points up in the fourth quarter. I mean, there's some of these things there. Now, I agree. Saquon Barkley, yeah, him going off in the first half like he did, you know, that will kill us if he does that again. Especially in the playoffs and the Eagles crowd behind it. That's going to be tough to overcome in the playoffs,
Absolutely.
without a doubt.
But the team did not respect Kenny Pickett as a passer, so they loaded the box and said, "Kenny, you got to beat us." They weren't worried about his legs. They weren't worried about his arm. Whereas with Jalen Hurts, you got to worry about not only Saquon Barkley, the running back, you got to worry about what Jalen Hurts can do with his legs, just like Jake Daniels killed Atlanta last night with his legs many times, kept drives going, getting first down. Well, Jalen Hurts can do exactly the same thing. Kenny Pickett wasn't able to quite do that. And so we loaded the box and said, we're going to stop Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts behind center. You got to pick your poison, man. You can't just tee off that way. And so I think it changed the dynamic of the game. Personal opinion.
Yeah. No, I think it changed it. But again, he ran all over the Cowboys with Kenny Pickett back there. Right. So why wasn't he able to, when Kenny Pickett came in, why wasn't he able to keep on running over us? And Kenny Pickett threw the ball very well on Dallas, but not us. I mean, everything worked for them, but not for us.
Come on, man. You've been watching football a long time. Sometimes it's just I don't know what it is about matchups sometimes.
I don't disagree.
You go back to why is it that the Cowboys and the Eagles can just beat up on the Giants, but no matter who's under center with the Giants, they come in and we just struggle with them. I don't know. It just happens that way. But yet we can play somebody else and we can just put a whipping on them. But we play the Giants and it's like they're our kryptonite. I don't know why that is, but it just is. And so the fact that Kenny Pickett and Saquon didn't go off on us once Kenny Pickett was under center, but yet when he played the Cowboys, who have a pretty good defense, and they just put up 40 points on him, I don't know. Maybe losing to us woke them up. I don't know. Maybe the fact that they were still trying to win the division in that game, they felt like they needed to, the wake-up call losing to Washington, so they needed to put a whipping on Dallas. I don't know. That's the NFL, and that's why they play the games, right? But it just happens that way sometimes, man.
Well, we've talked, obviously about the Commanders, briefly in passing about the Eagles, also about the Cowboys. I'll spend 2 seconds on the fourth team in our division. Man, the Giants went and won against the Colts on Sunday, and they went from the number 1 pick. They slided like number 4.
I'm not sure.
And they need a quarterback. They're going after a quarterback, and they probably won't get one of the top 2 quarterbacks. That's good for Washington. Right?
Well, I'll say 2 things. One is it's a testament to when fans sometimes want their teams to tank, and the players are like, I'm not putting bad tape on film, because whether I'm back in New York or not, there are 31 other teams that are going to watch the all 22, and they're going to look and see if I've quit on my team this year. And so players go out and play. And you'll hear players a lot of time when they're asked about fans wanting them to tank for a draft position. Some of these guys aren't even going to be there. Hell, the coaching staff may not even be there. So they're not trying to tank. So to me, that was the first thing that came to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind is how good are the quarterbacks coming out this year? And I don't know the answer to that. And
Right.
maybe there's no blue chip guy that everyone is like, man, you got to get this, and we're vying for the number one, number two pick to get one of those quarterbacks. Because I know Shadur Sanders is supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks, and I'm not a fan.
Right.
I mean, if I'm picking number two, number three in the draft, and Shadur Sanders is sitting there, are you picking him? Because if he's not the guy,
Right.
then you missed out on a guy. I mean, but I know he's one of the second rated QB in the draft.
Yeah. 1-2-2-1 behind Cam Ward out
Miami.
of the U.
But
And I'm not overly impressed by him at
exactly.
NFL standards.
So if you're the New York Giants, even if you're picking number one, are you picking one of those two guys? And I don't know the answer to that, but
Right.
I'm just throwing this out there as an alternative to the argument. So by dropping number four, are they really losing out? Maybe they
For
no.
the Giants, it's back to back years, right? Because they what's his name? DeVito, Danny DeVito's cousin or brother, nephew, played Washington and beat Washington about the same time last year. I think it was second to last game or third to last game. And the Giants went from 2 to 6, pick
I think.
to
6.
the third or fourth. And so they couldn't get Jaden Daniels. So right off at the beginning of the year, after a game or two, and everybody saw what looked like Jaden was going to be able to be, throughout the season. Giants were it was a big campaign of hating DeVito. If you were in those circles and saw some of that banter going back, just kicking themselves. They were just kicking themselves, right?
But again, I'll say that this past year's quarterback class was supposed to be pretty good.
Correct.
And I don't know that this upcoming draft class of quarterbacks is going to have the same cachet. So I don't know,
right.
man.
You never know.
I don't know. Because again, if you're telling me that Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders are your top two quarterbacks, if I'm a quarterback needy team, I'm not going to say that's going to excite me, if I'm being honest. So,
yeah,
like, say la vie, right?
Yeah, I mean it's it is the right situation. It's the right coaching that you have around it. As we know, the NFL is a different game. The skills that make you successful in college aren't necessarily the same skills that make you successful in the NFL. You got to be comfortable in the pocket, right? There's no problem running. I mean, look at perfect case is Jaden, right? He's comfortable in the pocket, and he's comfortable staying in the pocket and running through the pocket, up through the middle of the pocket, going around the pocket. Either way, go back to RG3. Man, as soon as it started to come in, he was going.
Right.
You didn't see him get hit in the face his whole time in Washington as much as Jaden has already got hit in the face and made the completion, right? Yeah. And that's just poise. That's just being comfortable in the pocket and being a quarterback in the position. So
absolutely,
time will tell. Time will tell with those quarterbacks coming out in this upcoming draft.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap this up, man, because again, this whole thing is about Washington making the playoffs, securing a victory, securing the playoff spot in their 30-24 victory over the Atlanta Falcons. And we're going to have some extra games this year, Ken.
I'm ready. You and I, that people don't know us, we could deal with the NFL probably, I'll say 10 out of 12 months, right? If they extended it to 10 months, go to a 24 game schedule, I think you and I'd be pretty happy. Okay, we'll take a break for like 2 months, but then hurry up and start training camp back up. And during those 2 months, you do the draft and the free agent. So there's always something going on.
Right.
But yeah, extend it out.
So we're excited about that. We're happy, and there'll be more to come. But we just wanted to get this out, give our thoughts and opinions about week 16.
Game 16.
Game
week
16,
17.
week 17, sorry. And it was a good one. It was a good one, and it's one for the record books for our franchise and for our fan base. So we'll be back with another podcast as we preview the game against the hated Dallas Cowboys as our favorite team comes to our city, and hopefully we get another win and finish this season with 12 wins. Man, that'd be good. So until next time, y'all, peace out.
Peace out, knuckleheads.